Hey everyone, me and Buster Green here, and super big news out of Hollywood that literally no one saw coming. And I'm just going to be commenting on it because literally no one else is YouTubing about it, is that Justin Roiland, creator slash voice of Rick and Morty on the show Rick and Morty, and creator of like a million media projects right now, is heading into a trial for some serious domestic abuse charges. By the way, I'm a little bit sick today, but F it, I'm going to try to tough it out and finish this video. So sorry if I sound a little bit wonky. I've been mostly trying to get out of bed all day. Now, I'm going to dig through this case right now and kind of take it apart, see what's worth mentioning on, and then speculate on the potential negative outcomes for all parties involved. Because a lot of people are throwing out some facts about this case, and I feel like the facts they're throwing out are not organized in a proper way. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to organize all these facts chronological and throw them down in the proper chronological order and just go over it real fast. So let's do it. Are you ready? All right. So Roiland worked his way up the ladder starting as a VA doing random characters on Adventure Time in Gravity Falls until 2013 where Rick and Morty became its own show. He teams up with Dan Harmon to work out some of the details and it went really well. It became a big hit. So after Rick and Morty came out, Roiland becomes a full-fledged celebrity. He gets all the wins. So everything's going good until around 2018 where Rick and Morty almost gets canceled, or at the very least it doesn't get renewed. But as it turns out, the reason for that was that Roiland and Harmon were doing some real behind-the-scenes negotiations to strum up a never-before-seen again or before since crazy renewal deal where they actually got the show renewed for 9 seasons and 70 episodes, which simply doesn't happen and is insane. Now, this deal was such big news that it basically single-handedly kept Adult Swim alive as Adult Swim floundered through the depth of cable, and it ushered in Roiland's era as a comedy genius slash business mastermind because he was able to make such a high-stakes deal and to win the ultimate win. So after that, he's on a real hot streak. He spins off Rick and Morty into Solar Opposites, The Vindicators, and he makes a few other projects that are pretty much just Rick and Morty without Rick and Morty actually in it, like Trover Saves the Universe or the recent video game High on Life. Unfortunately, there is a dark side, and here's where it gets dark. In 2020, the pandemic happens. You know, all that shit. It was awful. Now, on January 19th, 2020, literally month 2 of the pandemic, according to these charges, Roiland did something absolutely horrible to his girlfriend at the time. Now, it's vague, but the charges say that Roiland was charged with corporeal injury, domestic battery, false imprisonment, and menace, fraud, and deceit. So the next part is me speculating on these charges, but corporeal injury is very serious. Domestic battery is an easy charge to get out of, but corporeal injury with domestic battery means that he hit this girl strong enough to either break one of her bones or make her bleed. And it's also a very straightforward charge to prove. All you need is any photograph or x-ray of this girl bleeding or having a broken bone, and Roiland is instantly guilty. Now the next part, false imprisonment, that's where it gets really interesting. Because this was month 2 of the pandemic, I'm kind of seeing this interesting scenario playing out in my head where Roiland basically went like John Goodman in Cloverfield Lane on her. If you haven't seen this movie, it's where a big old fat guy played by John Goodman tries to keep a girl in his basement because he tells her aliens are invading, and it's very suspenseful. And she ends up not believing him and killing him, but then she escapes and she's immediately attacked by aliens because he was actually telling the truth. So, I mean, relaying this back to Roiland and the pandemic, I think he just didn't want her going outside in the pandemic. But if he went so far as to beat her up to try and keep her from going outside, then I guess he's totally guilty. So, once again, this all happened January 19th, 2020, literally 3 years ago. So, Roiland was arrested at the time, but he was immediately released on bail, and no one caught on because he's rich and he buried the story. Now, furthermore, in August of 2020, he had his first court hearing where he pleaded not guilty. Because he pleaded not guilty, this pushed the case into a trial, and the trial is just now happening because the American justice system is slow and ineffective at all levels. So the trial has finally been arranged to happen, and the trial will finally happen on April 27th, 2023, another 4 months from now. Now, look, I know absolutely nothing of this case other than the facts that have been publicly reported and that are available to everyone, but it's not looking good for Roiland. I think maybe he could argue or lawyer his way out of most of the charges, but not corporeal injury. Corporeal injury is almost impossible to disprove. It's very easy to prove, And, like, the only way he could disprove it is if, like, somehow, like, all the evidence disappeared, which is, like, almost an impossibility. What's crazy to me is that since this case was buried and no one heard about it until now, Roiland has just gotten bigger and bigger since 2020. Like, you guys all remember when he showed up in Space Jam and kind of ruined it? That was after he had already committed this crime, so that's nuts. I think things would be a lot different if we had heard about this in 2020 and not just now. So then the article goes on to state that in an absolute worst case scenario where Roiland is found guilty on all counts, he will be sent to prison for a minimum of 7 years. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think right now that there's not a good way that he can fight the corporeal violence charges. I think he might be able to argue his way out of the rest of it, but I think he's absolutely going to get locked up for at least a little bit of time. Now again, the 7-year term is if he's found guilty on all counts. I do think he could probably weasel his way out of the other charges. But yeah, if he's only found guilty on corporeal injury, that's a maximum 4 years, minimum 1 year. So I think honestly, Roiland is probably going to get locked up unless he manages to pull an O.J. Simpson and manages completely to flip the legal system on their heads. And like, yeah, I think Roiland could like be in jail for like up to a year, up to 7 years. And I mean, don't get me wrong, this sucks for everyone. Like, I like Rick and Morty, I like Solar Opposites. I think by and large he's done some good work for the American animation industry. And I'm not trying to say that right now this guy is definitely guilty, but I think he definitely has a lot of work to prove that he's innocent, given the situation that he's now in. Like, the story's just now coming to light, and I'm sure more facts are going to be revealed as it goes on, but I think definitely people are trying to keep it on the down low because I just don't see anyone talking about it at all. And I imagine that if it does come to light, that, like, probably Solar Opposites might be okay. Roiland only voices one character on that show, so they would probably recast. They could throw him under the bus and cancel the whole show because it's Disney, but I don't think so. I think it's making too much money for them. I think Rick and Morty is going to be way more screwed, and it's going to be much more bigger of a scandal because Roiland is so involved with that show, though. Like, I would have said that if this was a few years ago, they probably would have just, like, canceled it outright to punish Roiland and, like, make a social justice stand, but I think Rick and Morty is too big to fail, so I think right now, like, if Rick and Morty did fail, it would take Adult Swim with it. So I think it's more likely that to save the network and to save the show, as long as Roiland is, like, not out and out arrested, they'll probably ignore it. But in the scenario where he is out and out arrested, I think they'll probably recast Rick and Morty to keep the show on the air. It would be absolutely insane, and I bet if they do that, they'll probably recast Rick and Morty as two separate people. But I think that's the only way to fix this in the event that Roiland is actually arrested. Anyway, I have no idea who will replace Rick and Morty. Probably Chris Pratt. Anyway, yeah, things are not looking good for Roiland. Like, whether the charges are found to be true or not, I think he'll definitely get blacklisted from Hollywood over this. Kind of like what happened with Johnny Depp. Like, Hollywood is vicious, and even charges of domestic abuse are enough to get certain people blacklisted, even if they are proven later to be disproven. But this is another bad hit on Warner Brothers at a time when they really didn't need another scandal, as things are bad enough as it is with the Discovery merger, the Snyderverse collapse, Ezra Miller robbing people's houses. I mean, as far as it stands, I think that's where it's probably going to go. What do you guys think? Do you have any comment on Roiland's perceived guilt or innocence? Are you going to be pissed if Rick and Morty gets canceled just because Justin couldn't keep his fingers off his girlfriend? Do you guys want to see him locked up? Has he annoyed you? Let me know in the comments. And please subscribe and watch more of my videos because I'm trying really hard to get monetized, and right now I need a few more hours to get that happening. Alright, thanks everyone. Bye.